Welcome to the RevRoom. I'm your host, Rachel Bryant. Join me each episode as we discuss the strategies of top marketing practitioners, uncovering the tactics that transform ideas into revenue. Whether you're a seasoned marketer or an aspiring leader, the RevRoom is your go-to source for actionable advice and industry trends. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the RevRoom as we continue our series where we explore emerging and underutilized channels and tactics in B2B marketing. In today's episode, we're diving into a channel that's popular in B2C marketing, but has been dramatically underutilized in B2B, influencer marketing. At Inverta, we're passionate about helping marketing teams break free from outdated playbooks. While many B2B marketers are still relying on the traditional download, email, call sequence, forward-thinking teams are exploring channels that create authentic connections. Nearly half of B2B marketers identified integrating influencer content across their marketing strategies as a top trend to watch in 2025. Yet many still view it as primarily a B2C tactic. Today's guest has built an influencer program from scratch that only 6 months in now generates 700,000 monthly impressions at significantly lower costs than traditional LinkedIn ads. Join us as we unpack how to build your own B2B influencer engine, overcome the initial hurdles, and integrate this powerful channel into your marketing mix. Let's get started. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the RevRoom. I'm excited about our guest today. We're going to talk a little bit about influencer marketing in B2B marketing. We've been in a series about underutilized channels in B2B marketing. And this is one of those that we definitely know that is underutilized in the B2B marketing space. So we want to dig into that and teach all of you about how some people are using B2B influencing in their marketing campaigns. And I have a great guest with me today. Madhav Bhandari from Storylane is with us. So Madhav, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely happy to be here. I think very few people have talked about influencer marketing, and I wish somebody had shared that information. So I'm all here. I'll give it everything that we've learned. Yeah, so excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, well, great to have you. Thank you. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Madhav, and what are you doing, and what's your background and experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, I run marketing at Storylane, which is a demo automation platform. And I've been there for about 2 years, but I've actually been in B2B SaaS for almost about 15 years now. And I've led marketing at a bunch of other companies in the past. So I've been that person who's sort of, always been looking for those underutilized channels, right? I think we're in sort of in that age right now where it's like, just the whole marketing playbook is so different from like 10 years ago, back in the days of like growthhackers.com and inbound.org and all that, right? So it's very different now. And yeah, so right now I'm like very in this sort of exploratory sort of, just trying out different channels and everything. And it's working well. So influence is one that we are pretty heavily investing in and have been fortunate to get some good results there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we love to have our guests come on, and just to get us started, get to know you a little bit better. We've asked you to bring your favorite mug, your favorite coffee mug. I'll share mine today. I brought another one of, if you've listened to any of the other episodes, I brought another one of those sort of photo mugs that you can order from, any of the photo places. This one is of my kids, if you can see it, at one of our favorite beaches when they were very young. Gosh, this was at least 10 years ago, if not longer. I now have an 18 and a 16-year-old, so they're much older than this, but I love these mugs. They're great, like keepsakes, and bring back the nostalgia. So, but Ev, what did you bring today to share with the audience?
Yeah, that's awesome. By the way, I don't know how you've been able to keep those photo mugs for like 10, 15 years. Mine usually taken like a year or two. But yeah,
Yes.
for me, my mug is just a regular pottery mug. But I just really there's a brand here called A Clay Story, and we literally buy everything. It's sort of like very Flintstone sort of like all of their things. Yeah, I really like this mug because it gives that Flintstones feel. That's why I really like it.
I love that. Hey, if we every day like the
Yeah.
Flintstones, I like it. Those feet moving really fast on the ground to get us moving. That's fantastic. All
Yeah.
right. Well, before we get started on influencer marketing, tell us a little bit about Storylane and what you're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, Storylane is a demo automation platform. So, I mean, like, if you don't know what that category basically is, just like, I think there was a long time where buyers were just sort of like constantly, they had to sort of book, get on like calls with inbound SDRs and like just go through a lot of hoops, sign up or pay for their credit, share their credit card information and all of that, right? Fill a big demo form just to be able to see the product, right? Which doesn't make sense. Like, buyers should be able to see the product, without sort of any sort of gatekeeping and all of that. I don't know why companies did that. So about 3 years ago, this category emerged, and what it allowed is to just sort of give the product experience beforehand. So it's sort of like an interactive experience where you can sort of click through the product. It looks and feels exactly like the product, and you can sort of guide the buyer. So this is sort of even before a free trial. This is like get a feel of the product. And then after that, if you want, you can sign up or book a demo and all of that. And that is usually sort of help these buyers when they sort of get on calls. They either self qualify. So a lot of the folks who just don't feel the product is not right, they sort of leave. But the ones that are like actually interested, they actually have much more deeper level conversations with sales. So yeah,
Mhm.
so it's a pretty fast growing category. And so I run marketing here. I've been here for about 2 years. And yeah, a lot of my work right now is really just sort of helping us scale up, right? So we've been investing very heavily in like, channels that have like a very sort of high, I would say like a room for growth. And so paid ads and everything, those are sort of capped. So now like, so that's why I invest very heavily in brand and events and, recently influencer marketing as well. And it's been going well so far. So like we've grown pretty, like I would say like maybe about 4x in terms of revenue in about the last 6 quarters. It's been good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Congratulations on that. Well, let's talk a little bit about the influencer marketing side because that's what we're here to talk about today. Um, most people would think about influencer marketing be more in the B2C space, right? Like you see that on TikTok and Instagram and all these people talking about the products they use. I'm like, oh, I love that, and I'll go buy this makeup or this electronic product or whatever it is. What made you consider bringing influencer marketing in as a channel, for your, campaigns and your organization in the B2B space?
Yeah. I think when I, when I was sort of looking at like how we sort of scale up, one of the things that came to me right now is that I think buyers were just so badly burned with all of those heavily SEO optimized articles and ads and everything, right? Like I think that playbook was changing, and I was seeing a lot of people sort of buying from people they trust, right? So they're, them
Mhm.
having conversations in closed communities or open communities or, in person or virtual and all of that, right? And it's a like, and it's growing more and more. Like people rely on word of mouths a lot more, or like, their peer reviews a lot more than, seeing something that ranks number one on Google, right?
Mhm.
That sort of triggered me. I'm like, I was seeing there's a lot of great creators, on LinkedIn. We actually get, pretty much most of our business from LinkedIn. And there's just a lot of great people creating great content. So, if there was like an audience fit and all that, why not sort of explore them sort of recommending us? It actually started with us recruiting our customers, like telling them that, hey, share your experiences about your product and, about Storylane. And then sort of, yeah. We just wanted to see sort of the results. But yeah, I mean, it sort of went okay. This is about a year ago. It wasn't going that well. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the things when you did decide to jump in there, what were some of the big knowledge gaps that you had? Some of the things you just didn't know that you had to go educate yourself on or really start to develop that foundation to be able to build up a great program?
Yeah, I think one was I didn't know who to recruit as an influencer because it's not, I mean, yes, I used to follow all of these amazing people, but I didn't know they were doing brand partnerships. I didn't know if that was even possible. And even if they would have done brand partnerships, I sort of assumed that it'd be like super crazy expensive, way out of my budget sort
Mm.
of thing. And I think I'm sorry, I completely forgot your question. What was the question again?
Yeah, like, what were some of the knowledge gaps that you needed to fill? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that was one. The other thing I would say was, how do I sort of like how much how much should we be paying and how much should we be asking for, and how do we I think track the I would say the ROI of this, right? Then there was just a lot of things, and also I didn't know how to sort of scale it. In the sense
Mhm.
that, like, initially, what happened was we recruited a bunch of our customers, but what we realized later on was that, all right, these customers were posting about us, but they didn't really have an audience. They weren't really creators. They, weren't sort of reaching, mass amount of people. It was a lot of like upskilling on our end to be able to do that. So it wasn't producing anything meaningful. And there's a lot, like, in terms of like who owns the content, should we sign a contract? How do I negotiate? How do I get them to respond? That was another big issue, right? Like, how do you get the influencers to respond back to you? Because a lot of these people are
Mhm.
like really famous, so they don't respond to most of their DMs. And that was
Sure.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you overcome that? Like, how were you able to get in with some of these, bigger influencers to really expand your reach?
Yeah, great question. So I think first it was, like I said, we started out with our customers. That was version one. Um, it Yeah, it was a hit or a miss. There were some learnings, but yeah, it was like we knew it was easy to acquire. Well, not acquire, hire the customers, but they just weren't. So one learning from that was that we needed people who actually knew how to like write LinkedIn posts and reach a lot of people, right? So I sort of shut down the first version of the influencer program about a year ago, and then we sort of built a version two where we were like, we're gonna exclusively focus on the creators who
Mm,
know about like Storylane or demo automation, and we're gonna and we're gonna target people who have a fair amount of engagement in their posts. They're active. They like to sort of talk about things. So that's why, and that's when we started collecting a list of people, like who all could we like hire. So I think it started with like a list of people that we admired. I just looked at my feed and I started seeing, okay, these are the people that I really admire. This is like, and which are the ones that have the really high number of followers, which are the ones that are still
sure.
emerging. So I put that list. I think it was initially like 15 influencers, and then we basically started reaching out just to sort of get a sense, like, how much does it really cost um to hire these people, right? So that was a little bit slow, but yeah, we reached out to 15, 20, 25 people, and there were mixed results there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What were sort of the things? What were some of the metrics? Some of the um, eh, maybe not metrics, but what were some of the things that you were trying to achieve in this program? Like when you started setting out, you were like, "Hey, these are our goals," and maybe it wasn't measurable metrics at first, and maybe it was, but like, what were some of the things you were like, "We have to do this because of these things we want to go do."
Yeah. So I think one major thing was the the number of impressions to the right kind of audience. I would say two things. One is sort of impressions to like a big audience, and like that sort of trickles back to your brand searches, which you can track in your Google Search Console, and then through that you can have like we also have like a "How did you hear about us" form in our demo form. So basically, if somebody mentions an influencer, that's sort of a path. But then there was also another thing which was around how do we get into like this inner circle of these big folks, right? Like
Mhm.
um how do we get this inner circle to start talking about us, and then so that word spreads, and then we sort of are able to get the others, or sort of have them aware about Storylane. So yeah, that's essentially. So our numbers were, what we were looking at was impressions. We were looking at CPM. I mean, it still is there today. We were looking at if there are any influencer mentions in our "How do you hear about us" form. We were looking at a surge in brand searches depending on a particular influencer campaign that did really, really well, or like performed okay or whatever. And also seeing
Mhm.
like, I mean, yeah, generally just like, are we increasing students' brand awareness? That was the main primary goal, I would say.
Yeah. So when we've talked before, you've talked about sort of a two-tiered approach to your different types of influencers. Walk us through that and how you categorize your influencers and the different roles they play in your strategy.
Yeah. So I mean, I will say this with a caveat that this is what worked for us, but it doesn't mean it'll work for the other.
Sure.
I I've talked to a bunch of people. Everyone has like very different versions of how they sort of hire influencers. My sort of thinking has been I've always been that funnel sort of a guy, no matter how many people say that the funnel is dying, which I maybe sure I agree on that. But I always think from the funnel perspective. So I was always thinking like, hey, if we just go after like the really top of the funnel influencers, we won't get the brand penetration. People knowing Storylane being a demo automation software. So we basically wanted a mix of both. We wanted people who could write deep playbooks about Storylane and like the whole topics, and we wanted people who can just reach like a top sort of a very mass audience, right? So a good
Mm.
mix of width and depth. And so that's sort of like how we did it. So we basically categorized our targets, our target influence in terms of top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel. And just to give more context, bottom of the funnel, like I said, it's playbooks with our product. It's thought leadership. It's a lot of things that just very deep sort of topics around like demo automation. From particular very targeted personas. And then top of the funnel is more humor based. So using like our product is
Mm.
like buyer enablement, right? And there's a lot you can sort of play around with, like the pains of a software buyer. So that's what a lot of these creators do. They take like different scenarios and then do that, and they do really really well. They just like we've had videos that have gotten like one video got like 1.5 million impressions and all. This sort of a split works really well for us, and yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So, how do you identify and really recruit the right influencers? You talked about sort of making a list and sort of targeting some that were showing up on your feed, but like, how are you when you talk about that tiered approach? How do you like even lump them into those different categories? And what's the criteria that's most important to you in really acquiring those influencers?
Um, yeah, so I think one is they should be able to talk about this topic. Like we shouldn't have to edit
Sure.
them. We shouldn't have to sort of be working with them to create their posts every single month, I would say.
Hmm.
They should be sort of autonomous on their own, like they'd be just flooding with ideas. That's the ideal one. I mean, I wouldn't say like you can have that with every influencer, but that's the ideal that we sort of look at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it was just more like we collected people, and I was like, for example, with humor, there were like a couple of very evident people that I was seeing in my feed. And then through that you can also uncover the other sort of creators that were doing this humor content, because they're all sort of connected with each other. And we sort of start building a list that, okay, these are the people that we should bring on for our influencer program. And honestly, these were like from the range of like somebody like a corporate Ross, right? That guy as well. That he has like a bunch of millions of influencers. So he was in our target list too. And also like somebody like like somebody who has like 5,000 followers, but just creates like really funny, great content, right? So we worked with both, and then with bottom of the funnel, it was we were looking at customers with a lot of LinkedIn followers,
Mm.
and then yeah, like a lot of reach. So with them, it's a lot easy. They use it every day. So for example, like Gong is a customer for us. So basically, we have this guy called Brian Lamana. He can bet like he uses Storyline every day, so it's very easy for him to talk about Storyline. So that's why, like, we basically find those people. Sometimes you would also look at like subject matter experts, right? Like just people we know talk a lot about all of these things. Like you might have somebody who's talking a lot around agentic AI agents, for example, right? That person can likely also talk about Storyline's AI agents, right? So then we would sort of just have a conversation. And then with every influencer, what we do is we do like a 3-month pilot. After
Hmm.
3 months, it's sort of like you can either sort of end the contract and like go your separate ways, or you sort of continue on and sign a longer deal. 3 months is a good sort of 3 months is basically 3 posts. So we do one post per month. And that just allows us to sort of, you know, like get a taste of like, okay, can we work with this creator? Can they consistently create great content? It doesn't matter that every post gets a ton of impressions or not. It's just more like, can they create, over 3 months? And at 99% of the times, after 3 months, if you want to go ahead with somebody or not.
Yeah, I think that's really smart. And it goes back to you said it earlier, but it's that authenticity and really being able to create content that's authentic. Like, you do not want your influencers even to be inauthentic. Like, you don't want it doesn't need to feel like a paid partnership,
Yeah.
right? It should feel like something they believe in and they're passionate about and they actually want to talk about, and not just because they're getting paid to do so. So that's really important. And you've done a great job, I think, of identifying those individuals and finding people who are already creating authentic content and then just leveraging that, but also finding people who are creating authentic content, also like are in your space, understand the value that your product brings and all of that, right, to their audience. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so what's the engagement with those influencers look like? How do you structure the deals? How are the contracts done? Like, what does that look like for somebody who's like, I have no clue what that even would entail?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things. One is we talk about the ownership of the content in the sense like that's super important. You need to sign that, put it on a contract that there's a lot of creators that are creating videos, or sometimes they might create a text post, and we want to use that as a screenshot in our LinkedIn thought leadership ads, right? So you want to make sure that, all right, do you have the permission to use that content? Can you use it the way you want it, right? So that's one thing that we absolutely do, that whenever they create that content, we sort of own it and we can sort of use it the way we want it, right? That's one. The other thing I would also say is that I'm just sort of going through it. I think the other thing also is I'm thinking about the contracts. Let me pull up one of the contracts actually. It's been
Sure.
having
Yeah.
one of the contracts, and just to see if what do we add in there. Okay. All right. So yeah, I think who owns the content is definitely one. The other is also like, can you run ads on it? Can you run, for example, can you run thought leadership ads from their profile, right? That
Hmm.
can also work, right? Will they engage with your posts, right? So there's some strategic, perhaps product announcements you might have, or some sort of a big sort of milestone event in your company,
That's smart.
and you want to sort of get them to engage, right? So
Yeah.
you can sort of put that in the terms. How many times is it, twice a month or whatever, right? Will they engage with the other influencers content that we can sort of create like this peer group, right? Or like, how many posts will they deliver? What will be the content, right? Is it going to be video? Is it going to be text? Is it going to be a mix of all of these things, right? I think all of this just gives a good sort of clarity. And then we also add like, obviously, that it's a 3 month sort of trial. And, after 3 months, like this will be whatever the total amount. And yeah, I think those are like probably the,
That's great.
yeah.
Yeah. And you don't have to necessarily talk specifically about individuals, but like, what kind of investment are you making in this? Like, what are you paying somebody to do that?
Yeah. So it honestly ranges from anywhere from $250 to about $2,000. But I
Okay.
will say that that's the limit we've set for ourselves. Like, I
Hmm.
said that I'm not going to spend more than 2,000, 2,500 per LinkedIn post, because the unit economics wouldn't make sense. We're kind of almost, I would say, like a bootstrapped company. Like, we just raised a pre-seed round, which we never really used much. So like, we're pretty like we're a profitable company, so we need to be efficient with our spend. So and honestly, like, I would also advise that this might be a little bit controversial, but some of the larger creators that charge quite a lot are just not worth it, because they don't put the same amount of effort. Their reach is pretty average. The content itself is like, they've over commercialized their content. So like, every post is an influencer post. Like, now the audience
Um,
trust, right? That's a made
yeah.
you with a lot of like these bigger creators. And so the best bets are on the micro and the nano influencers, I would say, right? Like, the sub 10,000, the emerging ones, the ones that'll just, punch above their weight, or like really just try really, really hard to make the post well. And those are some of our best performing creators, right?
Hmm.
So that's why I think you can sort of look at the 250 to 2,000 mark. I would say the average comes to about $1,000 plus minus 500 is what I would say for most creators.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's great context. I think some people are probably thinking, "Oh my gosh, I got to spend so much, tens of thousands of dollars on a program like this." And what you're saying is not necessarily, right? Like, you can do it. in a bootstrapped way.
Yeah,
That's
but I
awesome.
mean, like, I will say that the influencer costs are, I mean, this is what, like, we push for. Like, the influencers will come back to you with insane rates. Like, people always overinflate. Like, I'll tell you, like, there's one creator that reached out and was asking for 75K per LinkedIn post. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, like, yeah, no, I mean, like, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, they'll just come with like these sort of insane amounts, right? And it's very common because there's no
mm,
benchmark. There's no like, it's a very sort of like it's like a wild, wild west there right now, right? Like nobody has like these clear guidelines, but like I'm telling you this right now. So the best approach is you go to the influencer, you're like, this is our budget. Are you gonna be okay with it?
mm,
So that's the
hmm
do it.
yeah, yeah. It's that transparency, right, between each other. Like, this is what I can do. Can
Yeah.
you do that? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Um, okay. Obviously, your influencer program is definitely complementing your LinkedIn channel, but like, talk about how it's also complementing all of your other marketing activities. Like, how do you mesh that into everything else you're doing?
Yeah, so we have a very LinkedIn heavy sort of a marketing strategy. So we run paid social, we have our own organic social, we've got influencers, we've got like a bunch of things sort of going on. We've got employee advocacy going on, customer advocacy, bunch of things. I think what we generally see, I'll tell you a couple of things. I think what since we've sort of onboarded the influencers, it's actually become easier to get more known names into our influencer program because they keep seeing our name and our content in their circles, right? So that way the brand awareness in the inner circle has actually improved. So it's a lot easier to convince somebody to come on board. That's actually a big benefit. If you're sort of an unknown brand, you there is no room for negotiation for you, and you will just have to accept whatever the influencer because they're like sort of taking a bet on you. But if you're like a very sort of known brand, it becomes a lot more easier. You can negotiate much harder.
Mm,
These companies want to partner with you. They actually feel great when they're partnering with a brand like yours, right? So it's definitely become easier for us. So like a simple example is that we used to reach 10 influencers and maybe two replied to us. Now it's sort of like we reached to 10 and like six would reply back to us. So that's been a great benefit out of it. The other thing also is just generally like when you sort of sell to like mid-market enterprise and your account size like what anywhere from like 10K to 100K, right? There's a lot of multi-threading that's happening. There's a lot of like um it's never a linear path for the buyer, so they're not gonna go check out their influencer's post and then just I'm gonna sign up and pay you 20,
hmm
right? It's never gonna happen. It's gonna be a very sort of weird path, right? So they'll see an influencer content, and the moment they see you at another event, they're like, "Oh man, I've been hearing about Storyline everywhere." So that's the feedback we got at events. Like when we
Yeah,
saw so much boot traffic, they're like, "Oh, I see you guys everywhere. I've seen you here, and I follow Brian Lamana and all of these others, right?" So that way, it sort of overall impacts the pipeline. It's very hard to track the exact sort of path that somebody saw an influencer post and do that. It'll maybe happen
sure.
like 10% or even lesser of the deals if they actually mention the sales call that okay, we found it. But it's actually sort of adding to your brand awareness, right? Um, I think that, and then also just generally like, I would say, yeah, I think these are just the two biggest benefits we've seen.
Yeah, that's great. Tell me about a little bit about some of the success you've seen. We talked previously about some of the increase in the impressions you're getting, but like, how are you, how are you seeing success in this? And then how are you measuring that on we've talked a little bit about the measurement, but like, talk a little bit about like what you're seeing and some of the increases you're seeing across your LinkedIn impressions and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the thing with influencer programs is that there's going to be like 3 months out of the 12 months where it's going to be like batshit insane. It's not going to be three back to back, but it's going to be like 3 months where you're just crossing millions and millions of impressions. And then there'll
Mm,
be like the 9 months, which are sort of like relatively moderate, right? It's the 80-20 rule in action. Like the 3 months sort of just are insane. So, like in those 3 months, we've had CPMs of like $1.5 at some points.
mm,
Like that's insane. One
wow.
five, ten
Yeah.
dollars, $7, sort of like that, right? And then we've had, a lot of the months where the sort of CPMs are like 50, 80. The maximum it's gone is like 100, 105. All right. But if you look at the average, when you compare across it, it's somewhere I would say about 25 to $30, which is pretty amazing compared to LinkedIn thought leadership ads. So we do, like, I think we spent almost a year and a half refining our targeting and our LinkedIn thought leadership content and everything. And despite all of our best efforts, the best we've been able to get in terms of CPMs is about 65 to $70 on our LinkedIn thought leadership ads, right? And to compare that with an influencer program where you have like $30 across like a whole year, right? It just gives you so much more confidence. Like, let's just go wide and deep. And there's a lot of people that say that, hey, you can't control the audience and targeting, while in thought leadership ads you can. But the fact is, when you see the engagement there, it's different. Like, you can see that it's a lot of like a particular geography, a lot of like the folks you see in your network going in there. So it like we see a lot of like people that we admire who would be influencers actually going in and commenting, right? So that way,
Hmm.
right? So CPMs, I would say, is like $1.5 to $100, just for context, right? It's going to be different for everybody and all of that. But it's working for us because our strategy has been very like sort of unit economic focus. We don't go beyond $2,000. The moment I get like a 6K influencer, this will go a little bit different, right? So it depends on the
Mhm.
willingness, the business model, and all that. The other thing we've seen is that we've seen or certain deals come through in our demo form with an influencer's name in there. So we've had a couple of them show up. So that gives an additional layer of confidence that this is a prospect that came in, mentioned this, converted, and like sort of drove the revenue. So there was like a definitive linear path there, right? So that also gave some confidence, right? And we've
Mhm.
had like uh, a couple of those million impressions campaigns where when we looked at our search console, we saw like on that particular date, like a huge surge, like a 3x surge in our brand searches, right? So that's another sort of validation that, okay, they helped convert people to go into Storylane and sort of, and that sort of increased like whatever from 500 to 1500, searches
Yep.
in a day. These are just some like sort of indicators that, give us like confidence that, okay, it's working and it's sort of, yeah, like we can continue to invest on it. And I think like at some point, my goal is that we have enough good influencers on board that somebody opens their feed and they just keep seeing, our brand in every second or third post or anytime they open their feed, sort of like that. Like that's the thing that you see with Clay right now. I don't know, I think they have maybe 100+ influencers on board. So, like I cannot miss Clay anytime I open the feed, right? And that's what they're
Mhm.
doing really well. And that's the end goal that I would also love to be at.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I I wanted to just talk a little bit about something you said earlier, which was about spending the time refining your targeting and really, doing all of that. And that's with your, your paid ads and things like that. But I wonder too about sometimes, marketers might bring something and say, "Hey, let's try this and like pilot it." Um it maybe it doesn't have any impact in month 1 or something like that. And it's like everybody goes, "Ah, this doesn't work. Get rid of it."
Yeah.
We're really quick as B2B marketers to throw things out the window.
Yeah.
We're not very patient. Uh, can you talk a little bit about, like, how much time should somebody be allowing, or how much time did you guys allow for your influencer marketing program to start to, sort of take shape and take hold and create some actual, results for you?
Yeah. So I mean, generally we do have a culture of experimentation quite a bit. So like
Mm,
and it's helpful when your account value is a lot larger because then you have room to fail in a lot of places, right?
sure.
So for me, it was more like I sort of set like certain themes when I sort of start like planning for the year, right? And like I align with my CEO, so I sort of define that, okay, this is the budget, that this is my marketing budget, and this much I've allocated for this particular channel to see if it works, right? And we can increase it up and down depending on the performance, but this is what I've allocated. So I need to spend that and I need to get meaningful learnings out of it, right? So I always have, like, even for 2025, I have like a very specific budget that I'd allocated and it's continuing to do well. So I basically sort of double the investment, like after having a conversation with my CEO. Um, but I think for us, it was more like The version 1, I was just not convinced. We were just not going in the right direction. Version 2, I think we gave about, I would say about 5 months. 2 months of just like figuring things out on our own, and then we started talking to people and other influencer managers, and then we got an influencer manager on board, like a consultant.
Mm,
So like Win, right? Like right. So Win sort of has helped us, build out the influencer program. He's amazing. So he shared a lot of learnings from his, work with the clients and all that, right? So it took us about 5 months in total to be able to be like, okay, this is working. This is really well. No matter how much money we're spending, it's continuing to sort of work really well for us. So yeah, I would say yeah, it needs any channel. Like honestly, this is actually the lowest time that I've had to spend on a channel to make it work. SEO and all
mm.
you can take a while. Ads can take a while, but influencers 6 months you'll know if it's working for you or not.
Yeah, that's great advice. Hmm. Okay. I mean, yeah, that's a pretty quick turn to be able to see if something's working. I like what you said though about setting your budget aside to do it. And I mean, obviously we talk about that in other channels, but I think, one thing I would encourage marketers, if you own your budget, demand gen, especially your growth marketing, is like when you get your annual budget, set aside some money to do some experimentation in new and in emerging type of things that you want to go do. And like, don't get yourself so stuck that you've allocated every single dollar to, your your programs for the full 12 months coming, and now you can't go do something different because you've already committed to doing some things, or, you don't have to go get your tin cup out and start to try to collect some more funds. But like, yes, always have an experimentation fund because there's always new and upcoming sort of emerging things that are happening, and you don't want to not be able to do those things because you're sort of stuck. I like that you work for an organization who's very experimental in some of the things they do.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Like we call it the marketing R&D. Uh,
Mm,
you gotta have an R&D budget for sure.
I love that. Yes, that's a great title for it. I love it. You can even have a little line item on your spreadsheet. I
For-
love that. Okay. Um, let's uh let's just sort of talk a little bit about Madhav. If someone is listening to this, we like to sort of have our guests talk about a pro tip. So Um, if they're sitting there listening to this and they're thinking about potentially starting an influencer program, you've sold them or they've been thinking about it and you just pushed them over the edge, right? Like, oh my gosh, we have to go do this. What is one of the like a practical first step they can go do, today, tomorrow, this week?
I think first is you need to find who are the LinkedIn creators you wanna sort of work with. So
Mm,
who are these micro or like big creators, whoever you want to work with? Who are these people? Build that list, right, and have a clear reasoning, right, and then just reach out to them, right. Collect costs, like that's the biggest friction point. Like the reaching out is the hard part. So you start reaching out to them, get the costs right, try different strategies, like try to pitch a budget or try to get the costs on like what they're sort of willing to agree on and all that, right. That's I think that's a good way to perhaps look at. Another way that you can also look at is there's a lot of influencers that actually list themselves as a position like advisor or something for a company. So you can just go in and like look at a company that knows that invests in influencer program and just go and like search for the job title advisor, and there you have like a
yeah.
bunch of advisors of the other company, right? These are just like some ways. You can also look at like anybody on LinkedIn who sort of has like one mention of a tool in their post, right? That's a potential person who works with brands, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, you can look at. So yeah, I think you can do that, or you can actually uh bypass all of that and just work with a influencer manager. And there's a lot of great people out there. I would also highly recommend Win, right? Like he's fantastic. His agency is called Creator Buzz. You can reach out to him, or there's a bunch of people there. There's also a platform called Limelight Headquarters.
Mm,
That is more for like if you want to just do the outreach yourself, if you want to find. So there they have like this whole directory of all the influencers that are willing to create sort of content for you, right? So you don't have to go dig up people through the methods I suggest. You can just go in there and find people
sure.
and then do that. So like there's multiple ways, but you just gotta get that information collected, like what's it going to cost for you and who are the people
Mhm.
you want to work with, and then yeah, just go from there.
Yeah, I would assume probably, like you said earlier, customers are a good place to start as long as they've got a decent sized following, right? And if they might do some advocacy for you, but in that influencer space, you want to make sure those influencers, I assume, are like they have influence over the audience that you're trying to reach too, right? And because a lot of us, I don't know about you, but like I follow a lot of marketer influencers, but I also like talk to marketers every day and I'm in the marketing business, and so, but if you're selling, something else or you've got some other type of product, you want to be able to get influencers in that space. So you might need to do a little bit deeper research.
Yeah, I mean, like I would say that, I mean, sure, if you can find, I'll tell you, the hard bit is finding influencers from your customers. That's incredibly hard. Like, you can't just,
Mm,
especially if you're a large business, right? Like, we have like 4,000 plus enterprise mid market companies. So, like, the org size itself is so massive in there, right? Like, it's very hard to find that one creator who's going to be creating. Like,
mm.
end up spending a lot of time, right? Um,
Yeah, it's a great point.
yeah, so and I remember like I had a chat with Vin about this, and Vin was also saying that you should start with your customers, but I don't necessarily agree on that because with your customers, there's going to be a longer sort of time in terms of for you to, see a return on your investment, right?
Mm,
The ones that are creating content and have a lot of reach right now, you can sort of get the results like right now. Like you don't have to wait. Like, because you don't know the customers is like a hit or a miss at this point, right? Customers are good perhaps after your first three influencers. The first three, you should just look at people who are just incredibly active on LinkedIn, who you feel would
yes.
love to partner with.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. And we've actually talked a couple times. We've had a couple episodes about customer advocacy and customer marketing on this. And what those individuals have talked about is usually your customers more in those in person settings, right, where you're like at an event or you're doing a roundtable or a panel discussion, something like that. That's a really great point, Manav, about really trying to focus on the people who have a broader reach and actually do this sort of thing and know how to do influencer, yeah,
Yeah, it's
activity.
hard.
That's yeah, that's a great point. Um, okay, so what like when you were getting started, what's one thing if you were looked back that you wish you would have known before you started building your influencer program?
I think honestly, the rates, I would say.
Mm,
That was the biggest unlock for me. Like, especially when people are quoting like 4K, 5K, 6K, right? Like I was like, I will never get budget for this. Like three influences gonna be like 15K a month. Like it's not gonna happen. But the moment when I sort of started talking to people and realized that it's a range and it can go super low and it can go super high as well, right? And it depends on what's your risk appetite. So you can even work with like 7,000 follower sort of influencers. Like for example, this one person came to me, he said you should follow this framework where it's like for every 10K followers, it's another $500. So
mm,
post 10K, it's $500 a post. For 20K followers, it's 1,000. For 30K, it's like 1,500. That's a good framework, but so that's for like the beginner level. When you're starting out, that's a good way for you to think about, right? So if you have a 25K, 30K follower, you can negotiate at 1,500 and just sort of tell them that this is my methodology. And there's different rate scales, right? Other companies say it's a little bit on the lower end. But yeah, I think I would say that you can roughly budget about $1,000 per influencer. And with customers, it can be slightly lower as well, I would say. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, the rate thing is the big thing because the rate will dictate how many influencers you can bring on and like how much
Yeah.
sort of budget.
Yeah, that's great. Um, all right, before we wrap up, Madhav, like, tell me a little bit about how you see influencer marketing evolving and maybe some of the things you're looking at that might be new in your R&D budget. Like, what are some of the things that you're thinking about when it comes to influencer marketing that might be coming or that you're exploring?
It's a great question. I mean, I have to think about this, but yeah, I think so. One thing for sure that's happening is there's a lot of interest in influencer marketing right now, right? So we've sort of gone past that early adoption phase, and now I think by next year it's gonna be by next year for sure. I would say like the second quarter, like this. Sorry, the second half of the year, it's gonna be. adopted by a lot of companies because the amount of
Mm.
conversations I'm having with people about this just shows the amount of interest, right? And I keep getting a lot of messages about becoming a creator myself. So I know that this is going to grow, right? So I think the thing you should be, the thing that I'm thinking about is, okay, this is great, right? Like, and people are going to sort of obviously, uh, like, be working with influencers, and now your feed is just going to look filled with influencer content, right? So
Mhm.
how do you sort of stand out in that sort of feed when at some point
Yeah.
it's going to be like 60% sponsored content, right? And by the way, like
Yeah.
one thing I do want to advise, right? Like that's like a big thing I would say is that when you work with influencers, always mention that it's a brand partnership. Never sort of do it organically and not let your sort of consumers know about it. Because the moment, like, if they find out, it's going to be
Mhm.
a brand. It's just, and it's not right. Like when you're sort of not revealing it. Like I see so many companies that are like working with creators, but the brand partnership sort of tag is not used in LinkedIn, or there's no like sort of mention that, hey, this is a sponsored post, right? Because then you're sort of misleading your buyer. So you need to be
Mhm.
all of our influencers that's in our contract. Like this is the FTC guideline. You gotta mention that, right? But like, imagine a future where like your feed is like 60% influencer content. Somewhere it's mentioned, some it's not, right? How do you become the most sort of authentic voice that is there, right? So I think what we're looking at is more sort of collaborating with our influencers and creating um episodic series, in the sense like um
Mm.
use them as more like content partners than like influencers of our brand. Like they have an audience that they know really well and they create content for. Can you partner up with them on a media property and sort of just run it independently for like months and years, right? So people eventually develop a following for it, right? It can be like, I don't know if you know this. I see a couple of people do that. Like there's a person. I think her name is Jenna something. She's the CEO at Go Nimbly, and she basically creates like this RevOps sort of Dwight style video. I look forward
Ah.
every week. Yeah, it's like it's almost there, right? And that like stands out to me versus all of the
Yeah.
influencer posts, right? So maybe
Yeah.
that's the direction. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, and I'm so glad that you're finding success here, and I hope that the RevRoom audience today has learned some things that might push them towards doing a little bit more of this or exploring some of the influencer marketing channels, and even starting an R&D budget, which would be really cool. I love that. So, Madhav, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing your experiences and your learnings with the audience. So, best of luck to you and all that you've got ahead of you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and anybody who wants to sort of reach out for any influencer program thing. I know like this is just like all of this information I would have loved like a while back. And there's probably more. There's things like onboarding and bunch of things. If you need it, just reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions.
You bet. We'll include your LinkedIn information in the show notes on all of our platforms. So, yes, please feel free to reach out to Madhav and ask him any questions. So thank you for being willing to do that, Madhav. So,
Of course.
all right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Rev Room today. We hope you enjoyed this episode. For more, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Don't forget to follow Inverta on LinkedIn for more updates and exclusive content. That's Inverta, INVERTA. Have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Reach out and let us know. Until next time, keep innovating and driving that revenue growth. See you next time.